Morning ladies and gentlemen, welcome to some sweet Saturday StarCraft action here at Aussie StarCraft. The bottom left hand corner of the map we're going to have a red Zerg player, Roccat Hyun, well known for his extremely aggressive early game, versus our Team Liquid Protoss Liquid Mana in the top right hand corner. Liquid Mana recently with some great results in the European scene. We'll see how he shows up here against one of North America's finest. Hyun, of course, fantastic Zerg player, originally obviously out of Korea, but playing in the WCS America scene this year, and causing quite a stir with his extremely aggressive early game timings. We'll see if he chooses to go for that in this game. Potential here for either an early expand or just scouting out with his drone. In fact, I think we'll see Hyun drop a spawning pool first, perhaps. He does love his early game aggression. I imagine we'll see a little bit of that here. Liquid Mana, fantastic on the defense. If he can establish the macro game that he loves to play, I think we'll see quite a match on our hands. It's always difficult when you're coming up against the WCS season champion. Hyun certainly has done a bit of that for us this year. Unfortunately, not placing as well as he would have liked in the global finals, but certainly seeded very well going into the tournament, and still had some great games before getting eliminated in that tournament. Here's the spawning pool coming down first for Hyun, which will be an interesting counter to the build we have going on the top right hand corner as Liquid Mana goes for a Forge Fast expand. So imagine that Mana will be able to finish this wall off before any early Zerglings get across the map. It was of course a 15 pool rather than perhaps one of the earlier 10 pools. A 10 pool would have hard countered Mana's build, and as you'll see here, Mana would have had very little if any wall, but of course both players are aware of what the other is doing. We have scouting units out here for both players. But you have Hyun's expansion on its way in the natural. I wouldn't be surprised if this Overlord gets over and checks out the other side of the map if we don't actually see Hyun go straight for a third base. Is a fairly standard Zerg reaction. You see the Protoss going for a quick second base, always want to be one base up, so you drop a quick third base, and that generally throws us into an interesting series of questions in the mid game. Does the Protoss go for some sort of two base timing? Do they build up and try and secure their third base? The standard sorts of questions that you find players asking each other in this matchup as we get into that 6-8 minute mark. So we'll see just how these players decide to gear up. We have expansions finishing now for Mana, or about halfway complete. Natural expansion for Hyun, as we can see, going to be throwing down that third base at this location. Of course, Overgrowth, a map that players have well and truly figured out at this point in time. It's been in the map pool for quite a while. Will drop out for the coming season, I believe, which I think all of our players will be a little bit excited about. Always nice to have some newer maps, though. I've heard some interesting feedback, so I might take a look at those new maps in just a little bit. Maybe put a video up on the channel about them, and looking forward to taking to the ladder myself later today to test out just how they mix things up. Cybernetics core coming up, of course, for Mana here in the wall. Going to strengthen that just a little bit, make sure early roach attacks can't bust through quite as easy. It leaves this one touch point rather than two pylon weak points that can be focused down in quick succession. So a little bit of clever building there from Mana. Going to be sending out a scouting probe. His third base almost finished up for Hyun, and Hyun actually hasn't produced a whole lot of units to date. He has been droning up quite heavily. If we check out the supply tab, we can see 28 to 25 workers, not too far off what you would expect to see at this stage of the game. The fact that Mana actually has more workers than Hyun at this point, a little bit of a worry. Normally you would expect the Zerg player to have droned a little bit further ahead. Due in part to the spawning pool first opening, it took Hyun a little bit longer to get that economy really rolling. But as you can see, those workers quickly climbing now for Hyun as we see 6-7 drones on production at the same time. So flick back to the resource, we see neither player hovering very many resources. Hyun, of course, marginal supply advantage, pretty typical of what you'd expect of a Zerg player, and a relatively quiet opening to this game. We see Mana just finishing off that wall with a Zealot eventually. That was quite a bit later than you'd expect, but Stargate perhaps using those minerals to grab this Stargate just a little bit early. We do have Phoenix coming out of that, so it looks like Mana will be going for some sort of Phoenix opener here. Common to see players grab 3 or 4 Phoenix for map control before going into that robotics facility. A lot of reasons for that. Early on, Zerg Mutalisk can cause a lot of problem. If you still have 4 Phoenix out on the map, it does make it quite difficult for the Zerg player to transition safely into Mutas. If you choose Mutas at that point, you know you're going to have to invest in Corruptors as well, and not something players are going to be able to do on this early game economy. Going to take a few more minutes to establish things. Have these Phoenix continuing to move out and hunt Overlord. It's going to be a second Overlord going down here. Not much bother though for Hyun. Got a few more on the production tab. Early Evo Chamber, a few Spore Crawlers to help deal with these Phoenix. Should mean that Mana's Phoenix do very little early game damage. Of course, they do serve many purposes. I like this Mothership Core out here to scout. Early Zerg units aren't going to be able to pick that off, but we'll give them a little bit more vision in the middle of the map. A few Zerglings. Actually still slowlings at this point in time. Zergling speed still not finished up at the 8-minute mark. It's quite slow, but Hyun obviously going for something a little different here. Going to be a little bit annoying here as Mana picks up a few of his probes off the gas, forcing Hyun to miss micro here, have an extra drone wasted there for it. So all these little things matter, and of course difficult for players to focus on so many things at a time. Quite easy to overclick, and we'll see just how long this extra worker stays here and can show, even though the amount of damage to the Zerg player is quite small, little things like an extra worker, this queen being lured out, it's going to mean that Hyun loses a queen here, probably going to miss the next inject or be very close based on the extra queen he needed to produce. And as we can see, still 4 workers on, so 1 drone being wasted there. We can see in the units lost tab, 2 drones lost, third one not actually doing a whole lot there. There's these little things that are going to add up for Mana and give him a nice advantage. Another 3 workers will go down. A 5th Phoenix actually on the map. That's not too common. A few more workers picked up there. It's going to make it quite hard for Hyun to continue to mine gas. Going to continue to need to replace these drones, and we see another 4 on the production tab. This Overseer is going to pull back into the safety of the Spore Crawler, but Hydralisk now out, and Mana is going to need to be a bit careful. Nice pick up with the Hydralisk there. Second one here as well. Mana actually having great control on these Phoenix, really getting some great mileage out of them. If we look at the damage they've done, a couple of Hydralisks, a Zergling, and 7 drones isn't a bad start. See that worker's probably going to sit here all day. Hyun probably a little bit too busy to notice that. Very hard to notice without checking out the number, and in his haste clicking around the screen, probably a little bit difficult to see. There's an Overseer in Mana's base. Perhaps he'd like to pick that off before this Colossus pops out, as indeed Mana will be very aware of what's coming. Sorry, Hyun will be very aware of what's coming his way. We see these Phoenix continuing to make life difficult for Hyun, as Hyun throws out quite a large swell of Zerglings and Hydralisks. So this third base that Mana's establishing could potentially be picked off by Hyun, depending on how he chooses to execute this. Not a lot of Protoss here to back up the Colossus, due in large part to the high amount of Phoenix. These 5 Phoenix do represent quite an investment here for Mana. He needs to be careful not to lose this. One of those Phoenix getting a little bit low, but Hyun countering by taking the gold expansion, and this is going to give him a great mid-game economy. Going to be able to flood Lings, Hydras and Roaches across the map, all very heavy mineral cost unit, relatively low gas other than the Hydralisk. But love what Mana's doing with this wall, throwing down a few gateways here just to force the Zerg into a choke point where those Colossus can do the most damage. Looks like Hyun actually setting up to take down these rocks, open up the pathways, so it's a little bit easier to envelop this army. Indeed, it's pretty important. The amount of sentries in this army is going to make force fields quite a dangerous reality. We can see Hyun here gearing up for attack. A few Zerglings getting roasted there, but nice force fields to start. Unfortunately, all the Zerglings already in contact here, but not actually doing a lot of damage. There's nice control from these Colossi. Is going to clear up most of those. Few Stalkers do go down, but the bulk of these Hydras held back by what were very excellent force fields. Unfortunately, the sentry is now out of Mana, can't force field off this opening. Phoenix going to pick up the Hydras to do a bit more damage, and their second Colossus is going to signal the retreat for Hyun. So unfortunately for Hyun, unable to capitalise there. A swell of Hydras on the production, 15 to come, and a hive on its way now. Macro hatch also going down the main. It takes up Hyun up to 5 hatcheries this early in the game, 13 minutes. His production is going to be incredible, so we'll see just how he chooses to utilize it. That fifth hatch, obviously a reflection of the fact that he's going to have this gold yield base. Going to be able to flood the units. We see his supply already back up to 160 after that fairly difficult engagement. Mana's force fields making it very difficult for his units to actually do what he'd intended. Had gone for quite a nice round. Unfortunately, impeccable force fields. Mana baited those units on the left-hand side in and then sealed them off and was able to deal with a lot of the Zerglings for free. So we'll see if he's able to do that, but I love this choice from Hyun. I think we just saw a Viper pop out. The hive, of course, has completed. Where would that Viper be? Indeed, there are 2 on the field here. They're going to be taking a bit of energy from the extractors here at the 4th base. I love this choice from Hyun. You don't see it nearly often enough, but the quick lair. Most Zerg players like to use Corruptors to deal with Colossus, but Hyun has been a real veteran of the Roach Hydra style, always its biggest fan, and has fantastic execution. Setting up for this attack again, it will all come down to these Vipers, and I don't think Mana's aware at this point in time the Vipers are here. The Viper's going to come in, get some great abducts on the right hand side. One Colossus comes in, actually focused down as quick as we'd like to see, but the second one pulled in, doesn't get finished off. The third one should die in 2 volleys there. Indeed, it does go down. Phoenix here trying to take out the Vipers, but unfortunately not able to kill them enough. 3 Colossus have gone down. The Zerg reinforcements streaming across the map. We have 12 more Hydralisks in production, and these Roaches and Hydralisks should be enough here. And indeed, Mana will tap out there, unfortunately falling to 78 supply. No units in production. Another Colossus would have been quite helpful, but 3 more Vipers and a swell of Zerg units on the way. And Hyun manages to seal that one out in quite convincing fashion, which is very much, I guess, what we're used to seeing from Hyun. Does a great job with this early game aggression. 15 minutes, not letting the Protoss get to the comfortable stage of the game where they have Storm, they have Archons, all of the big power players to deal with the Zerg force. Hyun great at massing up his units. As you can see there, 70 supply to 12 at the end of that engagement is just very typical of what Hyun will do to his opponent's early game. So great game from both our players. I love Mana's first engagement. As a Protoss player myself, it was a thing of beauty. Those force fields doing a great job of just cutting Hyun's army in pieces, but Hyun adapting very quickly. Hive already underway. Pulled out the Vipers and just went for that punchy timing before all the Protoss upgrades could kick in. As you can see, virtually no upgrades on the Zerg units. Carapace was in production at that point in time, but Hyun every intention of sealing off this game nice and early, and fantastic execution. Hope you guys like it and enjoy the video. We'll upload it to the channel along with some others coming up this weekend. So this is Aussie StarCraft. Thanks guys, I'll catch you in the next cast.